Welcome back to the Bird Nerd Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Rowe. February is often considered the month of love. People celebrate their love with gifts and dates. A lot of our wildlife also begins to pair up in this month. The focus of this episode is going to be one of the coolest groups of birds that begins to pair up in February, the owls. We'll discuss identifying features, cool adaptations, and how to spot owls in an ethical manner. But first, events. Project FeederWatch continues until April of 2026, and you can still join in the effort. Visit feederwatch.org for more information. Iowa Young Birders is hosting a bird painting workshop on Saturday, February 28th from 9 to 11 a.m. at the Hartman Reserve Nature Center in Cedar Falls, Iowa. This hands-on workshop will be led by local artist Kaylin Jade. No prior experience required and materials will be provided. Cost is $5 for each Iowa Young Birders member and $8 for non-members. There is no charge for accompanying adults. To register and see a full list of Iowa Young Birders' upcoming events, check out iowayoungbirders.org/events. Birdie Brunch will be held at the Jefferson County Park Nature Center on Monday, March 2nd from 10 to noon. We will be discussing fun bird behaviors that you can observe while birding. If you have any events that you would like advertised on the Bird Nerd Podcast, please email arowphoto3@gmail.com and use subject line birding events. Nothing goes better with an early rise for a day of birding than a warm cup of coffee. It honestly may even be the official drink of the sport. But wouldn't it be great if you could support bird conservation while enjoying a mug? Birds and Beans Coffee thought so too. That's why they developed their Smithsonian bird-friendly, certified free trade, and USDA organic line of coffees. Not only do they adhere to the stringent regulations that qualify them for these certifications, but 5% of each bag of coffee sold goes directly back to conservation. I've personally been enjoying their Scarlet Tanager Dark Roast. The bold, smooth flavor holds hints of chocolate. Their 6 roasts come in 12-ounce, 2-pound, or 3-bag options. They offer a variety of grind options, and you can set your order to automatically renew to whatever frequency you think you may need more coffee. Their 3-bag option is a great way to order if you drink a lot of coffee. They also have a 50-pack of their Frack Packs, great for offices and people who look for convenience. So, if you'd like to support bird conservation while enjoying quality coffee on those early mornings out, check out birdsandbeanscoffee.com and order yours today. Also, check out the Bird Nerd newsletter for a Frack Pack giveaway. February is the month of love. We often celebrate with flowers and food, but Iowa's wildlife also begin to think about love this time of year. Maybe it's the early winter thaws that used to occur in this month, now replaced by overall mild winters. Maybe, and very likely, the wildlife that calls Iowa home can sense that spring is on the way. Resident birds might know that neotropic migrants will be arriving soon and competing for the best nesting sites, so they better claim them while they can. Whatever the reason, the owls that call Iowa home begin to pair up this time of year, and this often leads to observation opportunities during the day. Working in a park, we often get calls about owls out during the day in February that people assume are sick. This is a great opportunity to educate people on the biology of owls and invite them to our public programs that typically center around them this time of year. In Iowa, we have the opportunity to view 9 different species of owls throughout the year. Only 3 of these species are considered common, with another 3 that should be year-round residents, but are now uncommon to see. The other 3 species are typically only seen in the state during the winter months. I want to begin by discussing the owls that are our more common year-round residents, because now is the time that they are pairing up and we can try to find where they might be nesting for the season. Keeping with my theme of organizing by size, smallest to largest, the first species that we'll be discussing is the eastern screech owl. These tiny owls only get to about 8.5 inches tall, with a wingspan of around 20 inches. As you'll find in most owl species, the females are larger than the males. The screech owl is more often heard than it is seen, and this is due to their amazing ability to camouflage. They come in two plumage variations, one gray and one red, and are heavily mottled with whites and browns. This helps them to camouflage during the day from larger predators. Screech owls will cuddle close to the trunk of a tree or huddle in their hollows and can hide right in plain sight as they sleep throughout the day. Their most common call is described as a high-pitched whinny. Next in size of our year-round residents and the most common species of owl in Iowa is the barred owl. The medium-sized owl will get to be about 21 inches tall with a wingspan of around 42 inches. They have a rounded head and distinct facial disc that helps direct sound to their offset ears. Overall, they are a mostly brown owl with some white spotting on their backs, but their belly is more white or off-white with those distinct brown bars. They give the common, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" call, and when two or more are calling together, often escalate into a fun caterwauling session that sounds more like monkeys. This is our most often seen species because they are the owls that have decided to adapt and take advantage of the large squirrel and rabbit populations in more urban areas. They are often seen in residential areas that may have a few trees and wooded parks and public areas. This species has been so successful at adapting that there is actually a little controversy around them. Their range has now expanded north through Canada and around the Rocky Mountains, and they are now colonizing south through Washington, Oregon, and California. This has put them in conflicts over habitat and food resources with the western natives, spotted owls. The spotted owl is an endangered species that inhabits the redwood forests of the Pacific Northwest, and these interspecies conflicts have led wildlife officials to open a hunting season on the newly colonizing barred owls. There have been arguments on both sides of this issue that seem to make sense from a conservation standpoint, but I will leave the final verdict to be made by the professional agencies that monitor these species and their dynamics. Back to Iowa and our final common year-round resident, the great horned owl. This species of owl actually covers most of North America and is one of the most iconic owl species. If you or someone you know ever had one of those bird clocks, then you likely remember their call from the noontime hooting. These owls are quite large, growing to about 22 inches tall with a wingspan of around 44 inches. They are great predators of the night and are one of the only predators of skunks. They're fairly gray overall, with either an orange or gray facial disc. Here in Iowa, it is typically orange. They have large ear tufts on top of their head that actually have no function in hearing, but rather are thought to be utilized more in sexual selection and in breaking up their outline for camouflage purposes. One of my favorite features of this species' plumage is their white throat patch, typically hidden when they are perched. The next three species are those that should be found in Iowa more frequently, but are now only seen occasionally or rarely. The reason that these species aren't seen as much as they used to be is mainly due to habitat loss. Two of them are prairie nesting species, and as the amount of prairie in Iowa has shrunk, so have their populations. Let's begin with the burrowing owl. This species is still occasionally spotted in the western part of Iowa, where the sand prairies still exist in large tracts. This area of Iowa is known as the Loess Hills region and is one of only two locations in the world with this particular landscape, the other location being in China. The loose, sandy soils of this area host more burrowing species of mammals. These mammals are required for burrowing owls to have nesting habitat. The owls will take over an old den site of animals such as badgers, foxes, and skunks for their own nest sites. A fairly small owl, only standing about 9.5 inches tall, has a fairly large wingspan of around 22 inches. These owls are often seen on the ground and stand erect with their long legs. Mostly brown with some white speckling on their back and barring on their bellies, They also exhibit the white throat patch like the great horned owl. Their call reminds me almost of the click 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 call of the American kestrel. Next in size, our other prairie nester, the short-eared owl. Neil Smith National Wildlife Refuge near Prairie City, Iowa, hosts a few of these owls every year and may even suffice as a nesting site in the state for them. Short-eared owls are occasionally seen along road ditches and crop field waterways foraging in the winter. Come spring, most of these owls leave the state in search of large tracts of prairie to make their nests. They nest on the ground. When perched or standing on the ground, these owls reach about 15 inches in height with a wingspan around 38 inches. They have a rounded head with tiny little tufts right above their eyes. More of a buffy brown color, these birds are well camouflaged to the prairies, looking almost the same as dried grasses in late fall. They fly low to the ground when foraging and can be mistaken for northern harriers. Their flight is less smooth than the harrier, and their wings much more rounded. I've often described their call as sounding almost like a cartoon cat that is angry. The third species of owl in this group is the American barn owl, and they are a bit of an interesting case. Before barns were erected across America, barn owls would have nested mostly in hollow trees or along cliffsides and rocky outcroppings. None of these options would have been of great abundance in Iowa pre-settlement. As farming grew in the state and more barns were erected, it is possible that their populations may have expanded. Today, more and more farms are consolidating, and the old barns and silos that these owls would have utilized are being torn down. With that, the populations of the barn owls in Iowa is shrinking, with them now being seen in the southern parts of the state fairly rarely. Barn owls are a species that can be found in a few different places around the globe, and their plumage is going to be mostly similar in those places. They have a beautiful buffy orange color mixed with gray splotches and small white spots. Their face and underside is mostly all white. They have a well-defined facial disc, and their call is a long shrieking noise. Based on the call alone, this owl should have been a better candidate for the screech owl name, in my opinion. Next three species are only found in Iowa during the winter, with very few ever nesting in the state. They can all be eruptive, though only two are typically thought to really display this behavior. Keeping up with the theme of smallest first, this first owl is the smallest of all species found in Iowa. The northern saw-whet owl only stands about 8 inches tall and has a wingspan of around 17 inches. These tiny owls like conifer stands, but can be extremely hard to see even when you know one is there. I've heard stories of people lifting the branch of a tree that they know an owl is in, and the owl just sits right there and stares at them. Part of their defense strategy is to freeze when something that might be considered a predator is detected. I've also heard of them going about their business eating small rodents or preening as a person stands only an arm's length away. By far the cutest owl that our state is lucky enough to host, these owls are a chestnut brown color overall, with some white spotting on their back and barring resembling the much larger barred owl on their bellies. They have a very well-defined facial disc and piercing yellow eyes. Their call is just a sharp boop, 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 repeated over and over. Next is a species that is known to have winter roosts not far from the park where I work, but the only individual of this species that I've seen was in New Mexico. The long-eared owl is another owl with long ear tufts like the great horned owl, but they are a much smaller bird, only standing about 15 inches tall with a wingspan of around 36 inches. Their coloration is similar to the great horned owl as well, with more orange mixed in among their body. They have a distinct stripe down the middle of their face. In Iowa, during the winter, these owls have been known to create roosting colonies, some even reaching as many as 11 owls. Rubio Wildlife Area is a known roosting site in the state that might be one of the most reliable places to see them that I know of. Their call is a single deep whoo call with a pause and then repeated. The final and largest species is the snowy owl. This Arctic hunter is considered a rare winter eruptive here in Iowa. They stand about 23 inches tall with a wingspan of around 52 inches. The adult males are almost completely white with minimal dark specks on their back and bellies. The females and juvenile males will have much more dark speckling on their backs and barring on their fronts. These owls typically inhabit the Arctic tundras and hunt lemmings and other small rodents in those flat, open terrains. When spotted in Iowa, they are typically seen in crop fields or the road right-of-ways, as these places best represent their native habitat. Eruptions are thought to occur for a few different reasons. The main reason is a lack of food resources in their typical range. This can either be due to natural fluctuations that often occur in small rodent species, or because of a good breeding year leading to more competition. A major eruption year may be a combination of both factors driving these owls south. The ones typically seen in Iowa aren't the all-white adult males. This may be because those adult males are the more dominant owls and are able to hold onto their breeding and hunting territories more than the young males or females can. Because they are often seen out in harvested crop fields, I have identified many old grocery sacks thinking they are snowy owls. Everyone wants to see an owl out in nature, and I highly encourage people to do so if you can. But there are some things to consider if you are out looking for owls or visiting a known roost or nesting site. One of the first things to consider is that most owls are nocturnal. This means that they are typically trying to sleep throughout the day when most people are wanting to view them. Do your best to not disturb the owl that you are viewing and never get close enough to flush them from a roost or a nest. This makes owls expend more energy than they need to just so that you can get a better view or photo opportunity. If the owl is nesting, it may become territorial as well. Some owl species have been known to attack people that get too close to their nest. For your own safety and the owls, view from a respectable distance. If you are trying to view owls at night, use lights very minimally. Shining lights into an owl's very sensitive eyes can disorient them and make them less effective hunters. If you're taking photos at night, minimize flash as much as possible. When you're going out to hear owls at night, some people will use a playback method. This is a method where you play their calls using a phone or Bluetooth speaker and listen for a response. It is recommended that playback only be used by professionals and usually in research or survey situations. Never use playback during the breeding season. It can cause owls to think there is another in their territory. This will make them expend energy looking for that owl and trying to either chase them off or looking for them to breed. Look for owls in the very early morning or late afternoon as the sun is setting. Check old holes in trees that are south or southeast facing, as this allows the owls to capture more heat throughout the day and early morning. I love answering questions about birds, whether it's in a public program or here on the Bird Nerd podcast, and luckily I've received a question from one of my listeners. Thad asks, I've been tracking birds I find on an app. Does it technically count as a lifer if it is dead? To answer your question, Thad, no, you are not allowed to count dead birds. The American Birding Association has a code of ethics that you can find on their website, and one of the ways for counting birds is excluding dead birds. Also, captive species do not count. So thank you very much, Thad, for your question. And if anybody else has any questions, you can write to me at arowphoto3@gmail.com. That wraps up this episode of the Bird Nerd Podcast. As always, if you have questions, events, or topics that you would like for me to discuss, please reach out by email at arowphoto3@gmail.com. Paid subscribers on Substack also receive access to my chat page that is a great place to ask questions and interact with the Bird Nerd community. Also, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter to gain access to special giveaways from our sponsor, Birds and Beans Coffee. I'll be doing some giveaways of their frack packs, so make sure to subscribe to learn more on how to enter. I appreciate you listening to the podcast and for sharing it with any birdie friends you have. Good birding.